Subscribe to our YouTube channel and don't forget to press the bell icon to get all the latest updates. There was a time when Shah Faesal was one of the most famous and followed names out of the Kashmir Valley. At first, as an IAS topper who inspired many people from Jammu and Kashmir to also sit for the civil services, and then as someone who embraced politics. Without any baggage of the old parties in Jammu and Kashmir, he was considered a fresh, new, young face. And now, a year after the anniversary of the abrogation of Article 370, Shah Faesal has announced that he is quitting politics and he's unsure of his next moves. In an interview to us on the Mojo Story, Shah Faesal said he is no longer willing to sell false dreams. He said, I can't sell false dreams. Things in Kashmir have changed forever. And the very people I went to jail for are abusing me. These are some of the comments from that heartfelt articulation by Shah Faesal. And we're stepping back to ask whether this is the beginning of the end of mainstream politics as we have known it. If even a mainstream leader like Shah Faesal, who has always said he's operated within the bounds of the Indian Constitution, is too disillusioned to continue in politics, what is it saying about are rebuilding the peace process and the process of politics on the ground? On the program today, General Ata Hasnain is with us. He has been a corps commander in the Kashmir Valley. We have Waheed Para. Waheed Para has been with the PDP, whose leader Mehbooba Mufti is still among those who's detained. Sushant Sareen, who's a senior strategic affairs analyst, is also with us, as is Khalid Shah, the Kashmiri himself, as well as a commentator on many things on Jammu and Kashmir. I'll start with you, General Hasnain. I'll get Khalid and Waheed to come in as contemporaries of Faesal in just a moment. But Shah Faesal was someone who was admired across party lines, across ideological affiliations. I remember Ram Madhav of the BJP RSS really praising many of the comments that came from Faesal. So when someone young like him in his 30s says he has, he today to remain in politics would be to sell false dreams, should we be concerned?
See, Barkha, I know Shah Faesal myself personally. From 2011 onwards, met him a couple of times. So I still maintain a lot of respect for him, for his intellect, for his capability, for his youth, for his energy. A lot of things. I thought he was bringing the right things into Kashmiri politics. This decision which he has taken, well, one respects his decision. But I think this decision is perhaps out of emotion more than anything else at the moment. First of all, I think largely people are tending to expect too much from the 1 year after the 5th of August last year. It's just 1 year. And you have to remember there was a consolidation phase. There was a severe winter. Then you had COVID-19. So you really had no time to build anything in Kashmir. You should not really be counting your chickens at this time. Give it time. I would say give it time. And therefore, I think Shah Faesal at this time, if he had to ask my advice and whatever is worth it, I would say, give it time. Don't take decisions in a haste like this. Because first of all, politics is not about black and white. Politics is not about binaries. There are tremendous gray areas and things are going to change in Jammu and Kashmir. There's going to be a positivity, I'm quite sure about it, that some positivity is going to develop there. And you need people like Shah Faesal, intellectually a vibrant person like him who topped the IAS exam, the civil services exam and things like that. And there will be opposition. There will be a lot of people who will be hankering against him. So he has got to learn his politics. I think he was too raw and too young in politics. He's still got to bide his time. Time itself will be a great healer as far as his own concerns and his own perceptions are concerned. And I think in future he has still got a place in Kashmiri politics.
So you believe that it's not over for him as a politician, General Hasnain?
Absolutely. I believe that. I think a re-entry into the IAS, to my mind, should be ruled out. Because that's not the right approach to follow in a thing like this. And once he has taken his decision, knowing him and knowing his intellect, the ideal thing for him to do is to teach for some time, perhaps. He will be an ideal teacher. And that's the place where he will get to know the environment better. He will get closer to the youth out there. And that's the way forward for him.
Okay, let's take that to two of our younger people, but I'll go to Sushant for just a moment. Sushant, do you agree with General Hasnain that it's not all over, that maybe this is an emotional decision? Because it was suggested today from Mehbooba Mufti's handle, which is run by her daughter Iltija, that there was kind of a pressure, a fait accompli, that Mr. Faisal was maybe told by Delhi that just leave politics. But I don't know. We've spoken to him, and all he's really saying is he has nothing concrete to offer to people, one. And two, he believes that the people he went to jail for were the ones who abused him. By this, I'm interpreting the kind of lack of support for the mainstream that we saw on the street in Srinagar. I guess that's what he's referring to. Sushant.
Barkha, a couple of things. See, in principle, I agree with what General Hasnain is saying. Never write off anyone in politics. You don't know when somebody will bounce back, and in the most unlikely way. But is Shah Faesal a politician? And I am strongly, and with all due respect to General Hasnain and other people in his biradari of government service, people who are in government service should not enter politics, because they are ill-equipped to handle politics. Politics is somebody like a Waheed Para, who is invested 24 hours in politics, who understands how things work. Just because you sit in the collector's office does not mean, and you interact with politicians, does not make you a politician. It might give you and even journalists should not enter politics. Let me add that.
I agree. I agree.
And they make a hash of it. I've not seen anyone who's been really successful politician as a journalist also, in terms of actually increasing their popularity and other things. The second thing is, what was Shah Faesal offering when he joined politics? I would have thought that he was an iconic figure in Kashmir. He was an inspirational figure, as General Hasnain and you are saying, and I completely agree with it. And frankly, even I was at one point of time thinking, he represents a new hope in Kashmir. But let's see, when he turned to politics, what was the positions he started taking? How were those positions any different from what traditional politicians were taking of running with the hare and hunting with the hound? What new ground did he try and break in politics in Kashmir? So frankly speaking, I don't know what he was trying to offer. And then for him to now start sulking that because I was put in jail, people were abusing me. Arey Baba, politicians get abused every day. Yaar. They get abused by people who vote for them, and they get abused by people who don't vote for them. Ask Waheed, he would know it. So for somebody to simply say, and because these people have very thin skins,
yeah.
And politicians must have thick skins, but these people have such thin skins because they're basically middle class people like you and me. Anybody criticizes us, we don't like it. Politicians can't work like that. So I think he was ill-equipped for politics, and I think he's now ill-equipped to join back the service. Maybe teaching, if he probably teaches the right things, that might be a better profession for him, but I don't know what he's going to teach.
All right. So two completely contrasting views on Mr. Faisal's future in politics. Waheed, let me bring you in. I remember being in Kashmir when Burhan Wani was eliminated, and every single media network would juxtapose these two photographs, Shah Faesal on one side, Burhan Wani on the other, and Kashmiris would get very agitated and they would say, ye to bahar walon ka narrative hai. But the narrative was ki kuch banna hai to Shah Faesal bano, Burhan Wani nahi. Shah Faesal had that kind of cult following. He was a national figure before he was a politician. But I think Sushant has an interesting point. Once he entered politics, he seemed confused. And, he famously said in an interview that, I think to BBC, that in Kashmiri politics, you're seen either as a stooge or a separatist. And he saw himself as neither. Do you think he got caught between those two, devil and sort of the rock and a hard place situation?
Well, I think, there's a very thin line when you work in the mainstream space in Jammu and Kashmir. So to be popular and to be in mainstream is definitely going to be challenging. It's a big conflict between your heart and mind. And it always, all mainstream leaders confront it. So definitely it's challenging Shah Faisal's IAS stopping, his civil service joining, definitely made a statement in state of Jammu and Kashmir and in the rest of India that somebody from Kashmir topping Indian civil service was somebody you had a common role model in India, where the young India would look for, and you had a role model from Kashmir to case to the rest of country. Definitely that made a huge statement. His joining of politics was also a big statement, and his resigning will also make a huge impact on everything, and especially how young people think about the mainstream, about the democracy, about the alignment with the rest of the country, the politics in the rest of. But you'll have to see, Faisal is somebody, he's like who believes in democratic disruption. He thinks, we should destroy. He thought I will be Kejriwal of Kashmir, and there's a space. But there's a lot of gray area in Kashmir, and as General Hasnain said correctly, that you can't be in hurry to make decisions. You will have to be very patient with this situation. It's a very fragile place. You see things which are not true, and you
What
face
has it
things.
been for people like you, Waheed? What has this year been for people like you?
It is challenging at a personal level. Last time I spoke on NDTV, I was detained for 6 months. I continue to remain under detention. It's been 1 year of detention. First in MLA hostel, then in house arrest. Personally, emotionally, and politically.
Right now.
Right now, also, I'm talking to you from a year of. I'm in house arrest, so I'm not allowed to move outside my house. The point I'm trying to make is that it has definitely been challenging politically, personally, and emotionally for all of us. I come from a place, I believed in the idea of India, in the democracy of India, and I was very passionate always about my thoughts and beliefs. So I thought, no, this is a space where we'll find, to every dissent, we'll find space in democracy, and then you end up from democracy, you ended up in detention for a simple point, because I criticized the government's policy on Kashmir or the abrogation of 370. So the larger point I'm saying is that what's happening in the rest of India is impacting us here. It is impacting us politically, it's impacting us emotionally, and you have a young generation, 46% of population is non-voters, who see shutdown, who see curfew, there is education going about shutdown. There's education. We may change curriculum in India today. We may change books of Kashmiris. We may change history here. But there is an education going on. From last 1 year, our students have been in their 46% of our population, which is kids below 18. There's a school-going kids. They have been in rooms. There's no internet. There's lockdown, shutdown. So they understand what's shutdown, why there's unrest. Something wrong is going on. Everything that's happening here. The whole problem today is that you are keeping Kashmir away from the larger democracy in India. You are depriving us not just democratic space, the political space. We're not even fighting. Forget state. State is too big of a thing to ask. I'm just asking you today that we need space to breathe and talk in. There's no space to talk. I'm so scared when I'm talking to you, even that I don't know what is the ramification of it. It may lead me to one more detention. And the more problem today in Kashmir, what Faesals also, he felt space is getting choked. He came he thought there is a huge idea of India. There is space for young Kashmiris and can disrupt the entire political atmosphere. And then he realized, though, space is very restricted. Today, the whole fight here for the young Kashmiri is about the dignity. How things are being held here. There's no consent of people. There's no involvement. There's no.
I think you've spoken from the heart, but there's one elephant in the room, and I've been trying to understand, Khalid, this for a long time. Why was there such little sympathy for the detained political leaders, even for a Shah Faesal, right? That is a question that we must confront if we have to understand what's happening. And one way to understand it is that the abrogation of 370 hit the mainstream, not the separatists. Because the separatists, the militants, in any case are not engaging with the constitution, right? With our constitution. Khalid, this exit of Shah Faesal, what does it say to us?
I think Shah Faisal's decision is definitely not an emotional one. He's taken a very pragmatic decision. If he goes back to service, sky is the limit for him. He's been an IAS topper. He may rise up to the rank of a principal secretary one day and get to serve if things are on his side. If the luck is on his side, he may serve as maybe the cabinet secretary of India. I mean, the sky is the limit for him, really. What he has really given up on is to give a give articulation to the political aspirations of youth of Kashmir, which in itself tells you how bad things have been after August 5th. We talk a lot about there is no credibility to the mainstream. The credibility to the mainstream is not there for two reasons. One is that the mainstream leaders are seen as a symbol of India in Kashmir. Whatever we may think of them in Delhi is not what the people in Kashmir think of them. And what happened on August 5th was a big blow, no doubt, to them. And they were seen, merely as puppets who were thrown in a dustbin and nobody talked about them. The second thing is that we don't understand is that it's the separatists, the ones who ride on the separatist sentiments, who hit out on the mainstream leaders. And the third thing that I want to add in here is that there is a common goal between a certain section of right-wing, political discourse and the separatist discourse is to get rid of the mainstream politicians and deem them as the mother of all evils, which I believe is not true because for last 30 years, all that Pakistan has wanted to do is to discredit the mainstream, throw them out of the way, try to, win them over. If they fail to win them over, try to get them killed. But in just one stroke, what we've really done is that we've served the interest of something what the Pakistan was planning to do for so many years and failed to do. Now, if you put Shah Faisal's, resignation or from politics in that context, there is really no space for him, because today he can't go back to people and say that, look, I'm going to promise you maybe statehood or maybe Article 370 if that is permitted within the limit that the government of India has put on, for allowing politics in Kashmir. There is no trust. Nobody's going to trust him. Nobody's going to trust him that the ones that he is demanding from him are going to deliver. So I believe he's taken a really personal decision, taken the individual interest to the best of his knowledge, and done what is best for him. He's not thinking about the people of Kashmir. He's thinking about himself. And I think what he is doing is absolutely correct, because the mainstream leaders, they have to walk through pits of fire. And it's not one pit of fire. There are multiple pits of fire. One pit of fire is the overarching shadow of Delhi, is that what is the red line? Then there is a pit of fire, which is the militants and the separatists. Then there is the resentment and the anger of the people. So I think it's going to be very difficult to do mainstream politics.
And I just want to remind our viewers, because historical context is so missing, that Shah Faesal is a family. Shah Faesal is a family that has seen militancy. His father was, in fact, a target. But General Hasnain, I think emotional points have been made by the younger panelists. And the one thing that you and Sushant agree on, while you disagree on the future of Shah Faesal as a politician, is that he cannot return to the bureaucracy. That is not a wise move. That door is closed. But you heard, Waheed and Khalid believe that door is not necessarily closed. And the larger message, will this begin the exit of other mainstream leaders?
See, Barkha, this situation is an extraordinary situation. It was expected to be an extraordinary situation when a decision of this nature was taken against the run of things. No one expected a decision of this kind would take place on 5th of August. And now that it has been taken, obviously it led to a dismantlement of mainstream politics in Kashmir, and therefore it will take a fair amount of time to rebuild that. I think the good message coming out is that you've got a good mainstream politician close to the central leadership, who's now gone as the Lieutenant Governor, with this great hope that he will work on this whole missing issue of building mainstream politics, maybe from grassroots upwards. Possibly it starts from the Panchayati Raj system and then comes up to the higher levels. I don't see politics coming back, mainstream politics coming back to Kashmir in a hurry anytime, because that will be an artificial way. Selecting and parachuting people into it after having dismantled the whole system is not the way it's going to happen. You've got to allow a natural process. You've got to allow aspirational people to build up again. And no doubt the government has got the purview to carry out selection here and there to make sure that politics are clean. I may remind people, remember Mizoram. In Mizoram, ultimately, everyone who was fighting against the idea of India, everyone who was opposing India and fighting as militants came back to government and actually ruled Mizoram. Thereafter, what a successful model it has been. You can't replicate that here. But what you can do is you can definitely have a hope that you will create the right political community here. And that is going to take some time. That is why I alluded to this fact that for Shah Faesal to feel disappointed at this stage, too premature. He has the intellect, he has the bandwidth, he has the capability to stick it out, and I'm sure he will still make a very good point.
Okay, so Sushant, since you think that's not happening, the larger question that has to be addressed is this. What have we gained by marginalizing the mainstream? Because there is no question that the mainstream is marginalized. Now, General Hasnain makes a reference to dismantling the system. It's almost like we're going to bring this building down because the edifice on which it's constructed, in the view of this government, is flawed. The political edifice is flawed. So we're going to bring it down. But Faesal was someone without baggage. Faesal didn't come from the two families of Jammu and Kashmir, as the BJP sometimes referred to the Muftis and the Abdullahs. Faesal was not a dynast. Faesal was a self-made doctor, then a bureaucrat. He's the kind of person in our drawing room we'd say, "Aap jaise logon ko rajniti mein aana chahiye." So agar aap jaise log aur hum jaise log chhod ke chale jaye, then what are we really saying about politics?
No, because the fact of the matter is that politics is a lot more complex than what we discuss in our drawing rooms. And I think that is a lesson which is very often missed when we discuss politics in our drawing rooms. So that is one. So I have nothing against. See, one, the kind of stuff which Shah Faesal had been saying even before he jumped into politics, I think makes him a bit of an unacceptable figure as far as New Delhi is concerned. Having said that, I must say one thing. I am, again, one of those rare occasions when I am not on the same page as General Hasnain. But since this is not Pakistan, as a civilian, I can be on a different page than a general. I have serious issues on the way the politics has been handled in Jammu and Kashmir post August 5. We kind of botched it up because this kind of political engineering which we might want to have a grassroots movement. I have no problems with it. And I actually have absolutely no issues with the decisions which were taken on August 5. Only thing which I believe is that maybe converting the state into a union territory is probably not going to be tenable in the long run. But other than that, I don't have any issues with 370 going out or not. Other people might have. But the way the politics has been handled, we have messed up in Kashmir every time we've tried to do political engineering in Kashmir. Politics has to be an organic process. So yes, pave the way for grassroots level democracy, pave the way for all of that. But that does not mean that you put politicians who have been in this business out of jobs, or you hound them as though they're some kind of, suddenly they become some kind of untouchables. I don't think that's the right way to go about it. Secondly, again, within the mainstream parties, there were any number of politicians who should not have been given the treatment that they were given. I don't quite agree whether the mainstream has been marginalized. Who has tested the waters of Kashmir's politics, whether the mainstream has been marginalized or not? Just because the people didn't come out in protest or there were voices against politicians, you take any government in any part of India, the moment, say, for example, Chandrababu Naidu loses an election, do you hear anybody lament about his fate? Or if he is, taken to court, do you think anybody gives a damn what happens to Chandrababu Naidu once he is no longer in power? भाई हम लोग उगते हुए सूरज को पूजा करते हैं, जब सूरज डूब गया उसको nobody gives a damn. So the point is that I would certainly not say, and I would disagree with my friend Khalid, that the mainstream politicians have been completely marginalized. They are marginalized at this point in time, and I think that's a mistake which is being made. But let politics develop organically in Kashmir and let pave the way for new politicians to come in. But that does not mean disqualify the old ones. And let's see what comes out of it.
I think that's a great point. I want General Hasnain to just interject briefly on that, and then I'll take it to Waheed. Because you see this thing of political engineering, and this has happened across governments. If the BJP really wanted to make a departure from the past, then this thing of New Delhi propping up, New Delhi bringing down, New Delhi engineering, that should have stopped. Surely we are a nation that should be confident enough that if the National Conference or the PDP or any other party want to take out peaceful protests against the abrogation, why is that not permissible politics when it would be permissible in any other part of the country?
Barkha, I think it will come by and by. I personally feel this the decision was such that it was a completely transformational decision, and no one could have predicted at that time as to what would be the security outcomes of that decision. That is the reason why so many companies of paramilitary, if you remember, were flown in, deployed there, etc. And thankfully, a lot of homework had been done 2 years before, where they went after some of the overground worker networks, etc. And that is why the mob, so-called mob sentiment, didn't really emerge in the streets. Probably the government itself was surprised by that. And I think these efforts were primarily because of the experience of 2008, the experience of 2016, which led them to believe that unless they put down this complete political activity, there is a possibility of the return to 2008 and return to 2016. I fully agree with Sushant that you need a core you can't start building politics from nothing. You can't just bring in people out of nothing and start building up a political activity. It needs a core group. And therefore, I think the acceptable people, I mean, the term acceptable can be defined in different ways, but the acceptable people within the mainstream parties who are there for the government of India, for the leadership at the center, I think that should be acceptable. And they should be the ones who should actually indulge in this activity on which further people, younger people, acceptable people will have to build up.
So let me ask you this, Waheed. When you see someone like Shah Faesal exit, what do you feel as someone, a young politician? Do you feel that you want to stay the course, or do you also want to leave politics and do something else?
I think it's been, I mean, Faisal has been a friend as well. So definitely it's a statement for many of us who've seen him very closely. And a lot of his politics comes from his emotion as well. When he said that I saw people abusing me and all these things, definitely, we were in detention. So he would get to know about these abuses which we get. But Sushant is correct. We get abuses. We do get allegations, abuses. Every politician gets it. Prime Minister was trolled 1,000 times then when he was chief minister, and then he became Prime Minister of India. So those things should not stop us if our conviction is so strong. We are not here to give up the course we are in. I'll talk for myself. Whether it's, we believe in our politics, what we do. Definitely there are going to be challenges. There are a lot of challenges in the whole country with the politics, the way country is shaping. Our problem is not unique. This is a whole problem of India today. The democracy is selective. It is not inclusive. It's exclusive. There is a sense of statelessness in a lot of people, and that's a minority in this country. And that statelessness is somewhere, you making Kashmir a laboratory to all the experiments you want to do in the rest of India with minorities, with Muslims, other communities. But India's resilience has got tested again, time and again.
Can I interject there just to say that you feel that Jammu and Kashmir is a laboratory for what's happening in the rest of the country. But the counter argument to that would be that Jammu and Kashmir is an external dimension that the rest of the country doesn't. And that is why it cannot be conflated with.
I completely agree.
I'm just making the obvious argument.
I completely agree.
I needed to say that.
There is a local dimension, there's a regional dimension, there is an external dimension, and we have been the only party which always talks about that. There is an external dimension. Go and sort it out. Every time, this government has been talking to Pakistan about Kashmir. This government is talking to China. This government is talking to America. This government is talking to Saudi Arabia about Kashmir, but not to its own people. The unfortunate part is, आप मुसलमानों से बात करने सऊदी अरबिया जाते हैं, दुबई जाते हैं, लेकिन अपने मुसलमानों से बात नहीं करते. आप कश्मीरी की बात हर स्टेज पे कर रहे हैं. आपको ट्रंप से बात करनी है. He talks about, while I'm going to mediate. Why are you seeking Trump to mediate when we are willing to talk to you? The whole point of this external angle is there. We are not denying there is an external angle. There is a Pakistan angle. There is a trans. But primary constituency is the people of Kashmir.
So I just want to come in here and take that to Khalid, but I just want to say, Waheed, while I do understand, everything you've been through in this last year, a number of Indian Muslims actually find the Jammu and Kashmir issue very annoying to them because they feel that हमें क्यों घसीट रहे हो इसमें? So I don't think that they would necessarily see this as a Muslim issue. I don't want to see Jammu and Kashmir as a Muslim issue. I think there is a political context here that we must not lose sight of, and we must not make this a religious issue. It makes me a bit uncomfortable. I don't know, Khalid, what you think. Sorry, you want to quickly respond?
I think you're correct. I'm saying that's not our view. That's the government's own view. This is not
you feel
our
that.
view.
You feel that.
From the political elite of the country itself, where you see things are being seen through the prism of Muslims and Pakistan.
Okay, Khalid. I need to start taking last comments. So Khalid, make your point and then quick last words.
There's been a lot of effort to engineer a political movement in Kashmir. You have to understand that the panchayat system, the elections, the credibility of the elections in the first place was under question. Today, the very panchayat leaders who went to meet the Prime Minister are hiding somewhere in Gulmarg, and nobody is allowed to enter Gulmarg today. That's the fate of the panches and sarpanches, which nobody in this country wants to do. That's one. But I also want to do a comparison. You remember Mushtaq Lone was killed in 2002 in Lolav, and Shah Faesal comes from the same part. Yeah. George Fernandez, when he wanted to go for the funeral, there were RPGs shot at the funeral. And it didn't happen. Such was the state and the writ which the militants had on the ground. But despite that, the government at that point of time gave space for normal politics to happen, and also had tolerance to tolerate such a blow that a minister of state is killed, his funeral is not allowed, a union minister is not allowed, but let the democratic process function without any disruptions. And you saw the result of that. I kind of have some degree of empathy with Waheed here, because I understand the tightrope that they are going through. Yesterday, a political leader wanted to go and attend the nikah ceremony of his son. He was not allowed. How do you justify it? How do you tell me that tomorrow, one fine day, there will be a glorious future, the sun is going to rise from the east and everything will be fine in Kashmir? Because the time that you're losing right now in the name of fixing the security situation, you're actually creating a ground for a much worse security paradigm, which will be very difficult to handle.
Okay. So
Barkha, I have two quick points to make. So everything, Hasnain Saab is here, Sushant is also here, you've been following it, you yourself been reporting a lot of cases of youth who joined militancy and arms struggle and all these things. The point is, everything that is personal becomes political in Kashmir. And there are a lot of personal things that have happened to the youth of Kashmir that led to take political decisions. That it is whether stone pelting, militancy, a lot of times it was a personal reaction that led to a political response. The second point I'm saying, a lot of times the government of India offered sky to Kashmiris. They offered all-party delegations, they offered talks, they offered dialogue, 4-point formula, autonomy se lekar pata nahi, even the sky as a limit was offered to Kashmiris. But now there is an opportunity today where you have the strongest government. We don't deny that. We've been part of alliance. The whole idea of alliance was that you have a strong government, let's talk and engage and try to let's evolve something. So there's a strong government. Nobody questions Modi. Unhone bola Galwan Valley mein koi nahi hai, logon ne bola koi nahi hai. So whatever he says, everybody trusts him. There's a time, for the first time in the history of Indian democracy, that 70 years mein jo nahi tha, ki Indian parliament can deliver on Kashmir. Where the people's anxiety and the fears of Kashmiris can of India, by the Union of India, for the government of India. This opportunity was never there. So it's already a totally constitutional discussion where the people of India can actually help the people of Kashmir and resolve this whole constitutional insecurity of people.
Okay, I think we need to take last comments. I'll go to Sushant first and the general can wrap this up from us. Sushant, you draw the distinction between the abrogation per se, which you do not have a disagreement with, and what has happened subsequently. What do you think the thinking is in literally kind of bringing the whole house down?
Okay, look, frankly, I can't even hazard a guess what the thinking was, and why the thinking is as obtuse as what it seems to be, especially on the kind of thing Khalid just spoke about, somebody's son's nikah and you stop him, simple things like that. I don't know why you had to do that. If supposing some people wanted to go and meet Farooq Abdullah on 5th of August, what was the big deal in stopping them? I'm not a great fan, but why not allow this kind of political activity to happen? What's the big deal about it? At least, if nothing else, we'll test the waters, but probably it's just the bureaucratic mind. Just 2 points, very quick points I want to make. I think, what is done is done. I don't think anybody in his right mind can even think that what happened on August 5 is going to be turned back. The only thing which I'm very, very certain about is that statehood will be restored either by Supreme Court or as a political move, and it will be done relatively quickly. But the discourse in Kashmir, the political discourse in Kashmir can no longer what it used to be. I think they need to stop riding on those 2 horses and trying to play it safe of, appealing on all sides. I think that will have to end. And the second thing which I think is important for people both in the rest of India as well as in Kashmir is to understand that what happened in the 90s when the Indian Muslim would not link up with what was happening in Kashmir probably does not obtain anymore. It's a different world we are living in. I think you will see a lot of voices in mainland India about what is happening in Kashmir, which you never heard in the 90s, Barkha. Today you hear a lot more about that than what you heard in the past. So I don't think you can completely de-link those things, and we have to take that into account when we move forward, not just between the Muslims of rest of India and Kashmir, but also of the majority community in rest of India.
Okay. General Saab, we have gone, since 2002 was referenced, we have gone from a Vajpayee doctrine to a Modi doctrine, and the two could not be more different when it comes to Kashmir. The Vajpayee doctrine was to talk to a Majidar, to talk to the Hizbul Mujahideen, to try and get the militants, forget the separatists, to try and get the militants. L.K. Advani met with the Hurriyat conference. The Modi doctrine is that even the mainstream parties have flirted with all sides for far too long. Kuch aur karte. Where are we going? Where is this kuch aur?
Good, Barkha, good you asked me that question. Because I was wanting to come in on this issue itself. Now I'll start talking as a strategic analyst rather than a political analyst or someone who's observing Kashmir from an emotional sentimental line. Most people forget the year 2016. Just remember that when Mr. Modi also came to power, for about 13, 14 months he waited. And thereafter he started making his overtures to Pakistan. And they were serious overtures, if you remember. UFA, the visit to Bangkok by the NSA, Sushma Swaraj going to Islamabad, Mr. Modi himself going from Kabul, coming to Lahore, and things like that. And everything got hijacked after that by Pakistan. 2016 is the year which actually is the year which made all the difference. The Burhan Wani killing, the various terrorist attacks which took place, sent a clear message that Kashmir was coming back to the 90s. And no one could risk it. The government of India at that time could not risk this. I consider that people like Waheed Para are the victims of a full perception that something drastic had to be done. I mean, someone like Waheed Para has been a nationalist, I would say, completely. But in the course of this entire perception that Pakistan was actually virtually going to rule the roost if something drastic was not done. And that much more than just the BJP's manifesto of removing Article 370, I would say the pressure came from the situation which had built up. Otherwise, this would have been delayed perhaps for some time. But the pressure which came from Pakistan, you remember the year 2017 when Operation All Out was launched? We were at a stage when our kill ratio was 1:1, the worst we've ever had in 30 years. I used to keep commenting upon it at that time. So, unfortunate, but a complete dismantlement probably was what the perception was. It had to be done. And then a rebuilding, and I'm very confident that people like Waheed Para have a great future. They will come back. They will come back because they are required. These are the young people who have the political experience, have the gravitas, have the sense of nationalism in them, still prevailing very much there. And they are the ones working to make the future, Shah Faesal included.
Okay, General Hasnain, it's always, your optimism is always contagious.
Barkha, can I just say a small word, please?
Yeah.
Can I just...
Okay, I do have to end so quickly. Yeah, one sentence.
Okay, just, just taking off from where General Hasnain left off, it's always been my belief, and I keep telling my friend Khalid this, that Kashmiri Muslims can actually change the discourse or the communal discourse in rest of India. They don't suffer the same insecurities as Muslims in rest of India suffer. And they can actually become beacons for rest of India. And if people like Waheed Para, who's done great work in Kashmir, people like him take up the cudgels and move the politics forward and no obstructions are placed on their path, I think I will go along with what, finally we are on the same page, with what General Hasnain said, that yes, I think we have a bright future ahead of us.
But with one sentence, which you said, Sushant, if no obstructions are placed in their path, we must allow this political expression. I think that is the point we're making. We must now, it's been a year, we must allow politics as normal, at least within the confines of the law, within the confines of peace, within the confines of law and order. We cannot penalize people for that. Leaving it there, Khalid, Waheed, thank you. And General Hasnain, Sushant Sareen, pleasure as always. And thank you to all our viewers for watching. Thank you very much. Thank you.